Hi everyone, this is Fiona Apollo. Have you ever watched a TV show or a movie that you liked? I won't say love, that's a pretty loaded word, or at the least tolerated enough for it to linger in your mind, but only in the sense that the things you liked about it contrasted way too much with its very glaring issues, which ultimately caused you to think, you know what? I could fix them. Well, as it turns out, lots of people do that. I know, I was surprised too. People on the internet taking matters into their own hands? No, surely. It can't be that common. And yet you'll notice that online, there is a lot of this mindset around, especially when people have the skills to back up their ideas. People will enjoy a series or franchise, but everyone still has their own personal tastes about how certain aspects of their chosen fixation could be improved, and pretty often will take it upon themselves to enact that themselves with rewrites of episodes, redesigns of characters, some additional motifs, maybe even rejigging the plot elements here and there, and so on. It's a tremendous show of both creativity within fan communities, being a really convenient way for budding storytellers or designers and writers to flex their muscles in particular, but it's also a pretty constructive way for people to work through critiques of shows or series they care about without coming across as overly critical. This tends to happen by nature of the shows, maybe not having the best production value, for example, or even being held back by other extenuating circumstances, such as the creators of the series themselves having a creative vision or direction that clashes with the whims of the fans, or even sometimes having certain conflicting views that directly clash with the demographic or viewer base the series has cultivated. Sometimes fix-it fandoms can manifest because a piece of media is just, of its time, dated. Not strictly because there's anything hugely wrong with it, though a lot of the time that can go hand in hand considering the language used or what is considered appropriate tends to morph as time marches on. This tends to have its own connotations which I would very much like to go into, but put simply, today I wanted to take a dive into the topic of what I like to refer to as fix-it fandoms. We'll be looking at a couple of media properties as case studies that many of you will no doubt be familiar with, looking at some positive aspects, some negative, you all know the drill by now. If you like the sound of that, then please keep listening and consider liking and subscribing. YouTube isn't my main gig, but it sure helps with some of the smaller bills, so it would very much help me out. I've been mulling over this topic for a while because I was struggling to figure out how to properly define and distinguish it from a similar topic that focuses more intently on redesigns, but I think I have a fun idea for that one, so hopefully it shouldn't be a problem. Please note that a lot of what I say in my videos is purely speculative and not based in fact unless evidence is given to state otherwise. I need to say that because I am one person doing these on a deadline every other week, and as a result, I am prone to getting things wrong. So if you do spot anything, please let me know. Alright, let's begin. Before we begin, I'll be creating today's illustration on Parblo's latest drawing tablet, the Intangbo X7. And let me tell you, this is probably one of the most adorable tablets I have seen. Here is the box, which in itself is very well designed, and there is some really sweet loot in here that comes with it. This includes the base tablet itself, which is very sleek and efficient, while still having that fun, playful look to it, and the colour is just gorgeous, I love it. We have a matching pen that requires no charging, and also a small packet of nib replacements. Here are the instructions, as well as a quick start guide to get you up and running straight away. You also receive a little pen holder, which is absolutely adorable, an anti-smudge glove to prevent your filthy mitts from getting all over the tablet as you draw, a connector cable, and you even get a really fun sticker set that you can use to customize your tablet if you are so inclined. If you've never had a drawing tablet before, not only do I think this would be a fantastic first choice, but it's also on the less expensive side compared to many other tablets on the market of the same quality. And let's be honest, this one kind of trances them for a few different reasons. For one, the presentation and aesthetic is just lovely. It comes in 3 main colors. I chose the green because of course I did, and look, I even painted my nails to match. The Intangbo X7 is also very versatile and can be used with a variety of devices, not just a PC or a laptop. The dial in the top left corner allows you to switch the tablet settings to comfortably work on computers, phones, tablets, and even allows a customizable setting as well. Here's a snippet of my partner testing out the tablet on their phone using Ibis Paint. So I will just be honest with you on this. It's been about a decade since I've used a Slate tablet. I have a really grubby Cintiq 13 HD, which is not great, but despite the slight hurdle of having to get over my hand-eye coordination issues, it's actually very intuitive and it's very comfortable to draw on. It also doesn't take up as much space on my desk as my normal tablet does, which is very helpful because my desk is not very big. If you're looking for a new tablet and this one tickles your fancy, please check it out. I will have links to a variety of online outlets to purchase from in the description. Back to the video. So again, what is a fix-it fandom? Well, a fix-it fandom is a recent term that I literally just made up for when a fan community decides to retcon, alter, or just completely rewrite aspects of an official series. This can often be a cartoon or film that perhaps holds some nostalgia factor or has certain aspects that appeal to a broad audience, but also perhaps has certain areas that these audiences may feel are slightly lacking and long to improve upon. Most of you will probably be familiar with this concept in the form of redesigns and rewrites. It's an incredibly popular thing to rewrite or redesign things lately into something that resonates more with a collective audience who are possibly hoping for a series to have a bit more oomph. Just to be clear, because I am an artist and animator more so than a writer, I will be looking into the graphical side of things, but the greatest source of these kinds of stories can in fact be found in places like fanfiction. I've noticed that this can happen quite a lot with series that were televised and had a high viewership by virtue of both merit in some of its concepts, as well as the series being readily available in multiple countries. And I think a really good example of this is the TV series Miraculous Ladybug. Miraculous follows the lives of teenage Parisian superheroes, primarily the dual protagonists Marinette Dupan-Cheng and Adrienne Agreste. The main premise of the series is that Marinette and Adrienne, who are unaware of each other's superhero identities, work together to protect the people of Paris from the main villain Hawkmoth, who imbues citizens with their own powers temporarily to fight on his behalf and obtain Ladybug and Cat Noir's Miraculous, the jewelry pieces they use to transform into animal-themed superheroes and fight crime. This series is a typical monster of the week broadcasted on TV across the world and has amassed a huge viewer base of thousands of households, and this is also carried across to online spaces as well. Miraculous Ladybug is a show that from its very inception was going to draw interest in what could have been. From the original 2D promotional video to the scrapped Quantic kids, remixing conceptual and canonical work into one's own version is one of the foundations of fandom culture. However, actively critiquing and reshaping the story is something very prevalent across the fandom in Miraculous Ladybug, most likely to the point of creating a side universe fandom in of itself. And there are quite a few contributing factors as to why that is. The show has a lot of promise, but the formatting of the series is decidedly out of fashion. It heavily leans into the formula of half standalone, half plot relevant episodes where a conflict occurs, maybe a secret will come to light that the heroes will have to work through for a couple of episodes, but ultimately the series is very formulaic and any damage done or tensions between characters will be resolved by the episode's end. This choice harks back to the era of pre-streaming animation where shows were given a substantial amount of episodes to coincide with TV slots, and which also allowed these episodes to be aired out of order so that people could just come and watch whatever episode was airing on TV at that time. Another reason for this being so prominent with Ladybug in particular is also likely due to the cartoon being made in France, where labour laws and unions are much stronger than in other countries and directly clashes with the great deal of practices carried out in the world of streaming. That's not to say that the practices of streaming aren't an issue in France, because they are, but what it means is that there are still some shows being made that are being allowed to have this kind of formula, so things like filler, Christmas specials, etc. are still around, which honestly I'm not mad about. There's nothing wrong with it, I quite like it actually, but it faces a few obstacles trying to adhere to this formula in the modern media landscape. While this more predictable model works for younger kids, which are obviously the show's main demographic, they are also being exposed to social media at the same time, where they are seeing this echo chamber of people discussing their favourite shows and how they would design or write things differently, and who are also very loudly discussing the show's issues and dragging down any positive aspects that it might have. As they get older, and also, it's not all just kids, since older animation fans also enjoy the show, but as people's understandings and perceptions of the show have shifted, they become less taken with the whole formulaic structure and instead want to get the plot-relevant episodes a lot faster. And as more people in general also have access to better resources like art tutorials, writing tips, videos and narrative structure, and all of that, the concept of recreating a show in your own vision becomes that much more appealing. We also have to remember that because this show is being aired on TV, there are a lot of episodes, which means that the plot needs to be stretched out a lot. So I think quite a bit of the issue to do with the time that it's taking for the plot to develop is just that. People's attention spans, because of things like the internet and YouTube shorts and all of that, are getting shorter, so I think it's just an issue of impatience. Two prominent examples that tie into the Fix-It fandom culture of this are the Miraculous Office AU by M. Zerl, a series of animations on YouTube where the cast of the conceptual Quantic kids, and Felix, the earlier iteration of Adrian from the promo video and concept art, are older, working at Gabriel Agreste's company, and moonlighting as superheroes. And also Scarlet Lady, a comic series by Zoe Onesama over on Tumblr, which shows an alternate retelling where Chloe is the one who finds the Ladybug Miraculous and Marinette has the Bee Miraculous. These two make a pretty good example of the spectrum of Fix-It fandoms. Miraculous Office takes bits and pieces of concepts from the original ideas of Miraculous Ladybug pre-TV show, remixing it into something almost original. It's an alternate universe, a different song to the one we are used to hearing from the OG show, because those notes were never written. Another author just happened to pen their vision of what these plot threads could have led to if wiping the creative slate clean. Each animation is itself an arc. spotlighting different aspects of the office, Felix and Marinette's animosity, Allegra's backstory, etc., whilst feeding the looming threat of Hawkmoth in the background. Scarlet Lady is different in that it takes a more episodic fix approach. The concept is still actively within the purview of canon. The kids find the Miraculous, become superheroes, and fight Monster of the Week style battles. The caveat is that the hero of the story is not Marinette. The hero, Chloe, is the antagonist, and Chat Noir / Adrian is the one who constantly has to fix things. Marinette plays a supportive role for a while before getting the Be Miraculous. This takes literal episodes of the show and bends it to the narrative, inverting it in a way that can cover the original's flaws. It's a song we're familiar with, but set in a different key. Expanding on scrapped ideas or cut characters is no stranger to fandom culture. Alternate universes exist for a reason, to the point where they've become popularized in creative projects today to the point of being exhaustive. Miraculous Ladybug is no stranger to that, with AO3 Fix about alternate universes, rewrites, and, quote, everyone lives, nobody dies, being a tag with over 40k stories. 40,000 stories, just let that sink in. However, with a suspected decline in media literacy, the line between what a property is and what I as a fan want it to be may be becoming trodden over altogether, with fans reacting viscerally when a projection of where the story goes doesn't materialize. There is a difference between critique and attacking story writers for those decisions that may or may not have been their fault in the first place. For example, just look at Alex Hirsch and how much Disney censored from Gravity Falls on just comedic lines. Plot points we want to happen don't always happen, and fandom doesn't always react with grace on that. It's also worth noting as well that fix-it fandom mentality isn't always to do with fixing plot holes or making designs look better. Sometimes it can be about making the characters' personalities or relationships much more consistent. Unfortunately, a common critique of the show's character direction is that they are very one-dimensional. Marinette is a boy-crazy klutz, and Adrian is the angsty popular boy with a heart of gold, and the narrative very often caters to that at the expense of other characters getting any focus, and Chloe is the classic mean rich girl. And this is frustrating because we see these characters appear to have glimpses of more depth behind these initial traits, especially in more plot-relevant episodes. But just like the villain of the week and the damage done to Paris after every fight, it almost always gets erased by the time the next episode rolls around. And this has been brought up by fans towards the creator of the show, Thomas Astruc, who has various social media platforms like Tumblr and Twitter where people will interact with him and ask him questions about the series. Thomas Astruc is a little snowflake Sorry, let me rephrase that. Thomas Astruc is not the most receptive to heavy critique of his show, which to an extent I can understand. When you receive a certain level of criticism, whether it be well-meaning or not, all of that negativity towards your work can trigger a defensive response. I totally get wanting to be precious about your creation, but the level of this defensiveness which Thomas has displayed has kind of soured people's impressions of him quite a bit. He's been described as arrogant and rude to his fans and towards other media properties, even when they are well-meaning, and has taken to blocking people who disagree with him. A creator by the name of Ginger Ninja on YouTube actually got blocked by Thomas after he insinuated that the character designs on Ladybug were better than that of what we saw in the Pixar film Incredibles 2. People have really come to dislike the way he handles fan interactions, and again, it just really soured people's general feelings surrounding the show and made any issues more glaring as he made it appear that he couldn't see past his own hubris. So by extension, lots of people opted to do fandom fixes out of spite. Spite truly is the best motivator. Speaking of issues on the show, fix-it fandom can also come into play when fans feel the need to eliminate certain aspects of a show that are deemed problematic or just generally not in good taste. The most prominent thing that comes to my mind with this is character designs, with the biggest grievance being Marinette's ethnicity. So Marinette has a French dad and a Chinese mother, but her design in the main show leans a lot more heavily into the French side. Now, I don't know how to feel about how much this is critiqued, because firstly, Thomas's ex-girlfriend, who he was with at the time of creating Ladybug, was Chinese. I genuinely don't think that Thomas was behind this choice to remove any Asian features in her design, as in the Miraculous movie and other snippets of animation shown outside of the official show, these features are actually a lot more prominent. Secondly, and I need people to really grasp this, France can be a pretty damn racist place. It's highly likely the show's network heavily insisted on Marinette's appearance leaning more on the French side than the Chinese side for the series, which in itself is kind of silly when you look at how diverse Marinette's classmates are, including her best friend Alia, whose family is from Martinique, which is an island in the Caribbean Sea. But anyways, I've rambled enough about Miraculous. It has its issues, but at the end of the day, it's a cartoon. No one's committing a crime by liking it just the way it is. Also, fun fact, being a fan of the show is how I met my partner, who has taken much delight in helping me with this script today. I love you, sweetheart. Alright, let's keep it moving, because Miraculous isn't the only property I want to talk about here. Moving on, let's take a look at a more extreme case of when people are unsatisfied with the end result of a story and instead see more fulfillment in digging into scrapped and abandoned concepts that serve as a glimpse into what could have been. The Disney film Wish follows the story of a girl called Asha, who discovers the ruler of her kingdom, a wizard king, steals people's wishes to keep them obedient to his rule. After wishing on a star, the star falls, befriends her, and together they seek a way to undo the damage the wizard king has done in imprisoning the wishes of the people of the kingdom. When summed up like that, it doesn't seem all too bad, does it? But the problem with both this setup and its execution is that the movie doesn't do anything to dig into the layers of the characters performing these actions. You don't really have anything more than surface-level motivations driving the plot forward, and it makes it very difficult to become emotionally invested in the story or its characters. The skeleton of the plot is there, but no meat diving into why these characters do what they do, who they are outside of the plot, or even how they'll preserve the plot from changes. Remember, good characters can carry a bad plot, but a good plot can't carry bad characters. Luckily, the concept art, deleted storyboards, and original concepts answered these questions for some fans. And when given an inch, dedicated artists, writers, and storytellers have run a mile with these concepts. And it all began with one simple piece of concept art which can be found in the official Wish art book. Described in the art book as a Peter Pan-esque character, the little marketable plushie seemed to have had multiple iterations before the final draft, at one point appearing as a humanoid boy around Asha's age, leveling the playing field and giving Asha someone else to interact with other than the scant scenes of her friends. Alongside this, it was also revealed that Queen Amaya was originally evil alongside King Magnifico, which made it appear that the seeds were already being sowed for this evil bad guy love versus good guy love. And this has been reflected in the many animatics created around the demo version of the song At All Costs. Originally sung by Asha and King Magnifico, and it doesn't work, it really doesn't work. Disney advertises this song to be used in weddings. So clearly this whole evil versus good couple dynamic was something they must have toyed with a lot before someone, probably an executive or some other fat cat in a suit, said, kids don't like romance anymore, give it the chop. Because of course. Except kids do love that stuff. Kids and adults alike love schmaltzy stuff as long as it's done well. And that has been a key piece of criticism Disney has been receiving for a while. A lot of their attempts at former beloved concepts and tropes have become very hollow and layered in so much irritatingly ironic self-awareness that it immediately takes you out of the immersion. People were incredibly disappointed that there was no romance in the film, considering romance was a driving plot in so many Disney princess films that came to define the genre, and it was especially disappointing given that this film was supposed to mark the company's 100th anniversary. I actually recently did a podcast with Greyworks, an indie creator working on the projects Howling Hoods and Myths in Manhattan about this exact topic. And I'll be doing a video all about the decline of romance in animated films in particular in the coming weeks. But for Disney's centennial celebration, people were really hoping for a film that would be a culmination of all of that history and what made the Disney brand such a powerhouse in the world of animation. Disney was the first studio to create an animated film with the intention to enact an intense emotional reaction. They already knew cartoons could make people laugh, they knew that for years. But with the release of Snow White in 1937, they sought to find out if they could make people cry. And cry they did at that first screening. Wish should have been given the time and consideration to be capable of eliciting those same reactions in the modern day, but instead they completely fumbled it. To be inclusive of this cut character really would have reflected the core tenements of Disney's iconography. Fairy tale romance. Disney has gone out of its way to completely denounce that aspect of the modern day animated filmmaking, and really, there is no need for it. As reflected in the animatics we're seeing from fans, romance can be well done in animated mediums, and ultimately it would have worked amazingly for Disney's 100th animated film. But the romance, or lack thereof, wasn't the only thing people didn't like, mind you. There were a lot of criticisms when it came to Wish. The art style was a big one. People wanted the art direction to be more reminiscent of the hand-drawn 2D style that came to define the genre, but instead they did another CGI film with this odd kind of effect that honestly made it look unfinished and like a filter had been put on top. The aforementioned plot issues that we already went over, and also it was rumored that various songs were created using AI because the lyrics and beats were extremely generic and kind of weird. With that much negative press being lobbied at the film, it's no wonder people turned to fix-it fandom culture to see what they could salvage, and let me tell you, I have never seen such a passionate fanbase who almost completely ignores the canon film and dedicates its efforts to exploring the concept art instead, where fans have been absolutely taken with the idea of Starboy being Ash's love interest. I'm not gonna lie, it's kinda hilarious that people are using Jack Frost as a stand-in for him when making fake edits and stuff. Jack Frost is just the bishy boy of Western animation, and it's great to see. Wish as a movie is on a smaller scale of reinventing/fixing the plot than a long-running show like Miraculous Ladybug, but perhaps fittingly, there was definitely more at stake with this movie due to Disney animations being so instrumental in so many people's childhoods. Get away from that bag of dreamies, you. Hey, Some fan projects have gone out of its way to entirely recreate the movie, taking concepts from the scrapped plot threads, weaving it into its own original creation. Pinky Machine Studios on YouTube is even documenting a reimagining of Wish called Alicia and the Kingdom of Starlight, with original songs, story beats, and animated storyboards. This is a large swerve from just fixing a piece and into a full-blown original reimagining, and so far, the art and direction seem excellent. On the spectrum of fix-it fandoms, Wish definitely seems to be veering more into what could have been, and instead of harassing creators, it's more along the lines of, well, I'll do it myself, in order to see the vision of what these ideas could have been fully realized. On the same topic of romance as well, it's worth noting that some authors even create entirely new stories just on the basis of wanting to see a concept in a show/movie/book fully realized. The Iron Widow, a novel by Shiran J. Zhao, fully credits their dissatisfaction of the ending of the Japanese anime Darling in the Franxx as a major inspiration behind their novel, even to the point where some of the staff of the show's production have read and approved of the book. So it's quite clear that there are a lot of avenues that fix-it fandoms can choose to take, and it's a pretty freeing way of exploring potential ideas without worrying about stepping on someone's toes for the most part. However, one thing I am wary of with that concept is exactly how that could possibly change and how thin the line can be between indulging in your own ideas and the controversial topic of art fixing that has long been a topic of debate, especially in the online sphere. Now, I'm not too fussed about kind of corporate properties because those are protected legally, but the bulk of this distinction can also be chalked up to the attitude and intent. Does this person still talk and act respectfully towards the original property despite any perceived grievances, or do they just trash talk it any chance they get in order to big up their own ideas as a way to garner praise for something that isn't even wholly original? The point of possible concern for me is when fix-it fandoms begin to do this for shows that aren't owned by networks or companies. Another series that is often subjected to fix-it fandom culture is Hell of a Boss and Has Been. This one is kind of an in-between case because while the two did start as indie productions, they are incredibly popular, and having so many eyes on what you make is bound to bring in people who have their own ideas and impressions of how the story should play out. What also doesn't help with these shows in particular is that, like Wish, they experience a lot of criticism. I know I bring up these shows a lot, but it is genuinely because they are so popular in the animation space, it's kind of unavoidable. I'll be the first to say that yes, there is a lot you can do with these shows, and sometimes the writing can leave a lot to be desired, but I can't even begin to count the amount of redesigns I've seen of the characters in particular. I'm not Vivzy Pop's biggest fan by a very long stretch, but if people begin to feel so inclined as to start fixing stories that don't have the level of popularity that Ladybug, Wish, or Has Been have achieved, I feel like this is going to lean very precariously into the territory of copying other people's ideas, passing them off as your own, and inciting harassment towards certain individuals for not making something to suit other people's exact tastes. Do I think this will become a major issue? Honestly, no. Not at all, unless someone decides to make that a trend, God forbid. These kinds of things tend to happen to popular projects for a reason, and it's because there is a lot more commotion surrounding them, leading to more discussions and more ideas. It's a natural progression, and let's be honest, nothing is original. Everything has its inspirations, whether those inspirations come from admiration, hopefulness, longing, critique, or even spite. Sometimes a property doesn't have to be considered lacking in any way for people to feel inspired by it. Sometimes, a lot of the time actually, it's because there is a solid foundation for something great, and other people are able to pick up on that while putting their own spin on things, and that's honestly what these kinds of things are all about. I think a lot of the critique culture side of things has definitely spawned from places that use it primarily for entertainment value, such as CinemaSins, and not because it's actually a priority to conceptualize ways for these properties to improve, or be done differently in a way that is interesting and appealing to a wider array of people. Dedicated fans just so happened to take this a step further and wanted to actually find good aspects to expand upon within shows and movies they enjoyed despite any perceived grievances. So if you're someone who has participated in fix-it fandom culture, unless you are just absolutely shitting on the original project for the crime of being boring or not having certain traits or whatever, honestly, keep doing what you're doing. It's not hurting anyone, and who knows, what you're doing could be a massive inspiration to someone else who might also want to explore certain aspects that they want to see in an original property. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. Are there any other media properties you think are often subjected to fix-it culture? What are they, and how so? I'd be very interested to hear about them. As always, please be sure to like and subscribe, and following last week's announcement, please consider joining my brand new Patreon, which is now up and running. I have 3 tiers. The first one is a tip jar that will earn you a shout out at the end of my videos, the YouTube Peeps tier that will grant you a special shout out, as well as access to Photoshop files of art pieces, a link to my new Discord, and bigger influence on future video topics. And the final tier will be to do with my animated project Mint and Friends. You'll get to see behind the scenes works like animatics, prop designs, artworks that expand expand on the story's world building and lore, and you can even have your own Mint and Friends character drawn by yours truly. Please consider supporting me if you are able, but if not, just watching until this point is more than enough. Stay safe everyone, and I will speak to you very soon. Bye!